Living on the streets of New York City, you can definitely meet your fair share of weirdos. Being a bit strange myself, the average wingnuts don't bother me too much. But every once in a while, somebody comes along and really freaks you the hell out. It was last summer at 4 in the morning, and I was drinking a beer and smoking a cigarette in Union Square. No one was out, besides a few college kids fucking in the park and the usual homeless bums. I was halfway through my beer when I saw him, a man with no shirt or shoes, carrying a rusty broom handle, walking along the path in my direction. Just how he was walking was giving me a weird vibe, from the clink of the broom on every other step to the way he seemed to wave his arms in a swooping motion. He was around 50 feet away when he noticed me and made direct eye contact. "You," the man exclaimed as he came running up to me. "Yeah?" I responded as he stood in front of me, panting, with pupils as big as his eyes themselves. "Demon, I have already banished you from here. How dare you come back?" Mark, at this point, I'm confused as hell. I had a lot to drink that night, and this guy was obviously on some sort of psychedelic and looked like PCP. "Oh, dude," I reply, "I think you got the wrong guy. I'm Joe." "Prove it." He says, as I go to reach for my ID, he promptly begins to scream again. "Never mind. I know your tricks, demon. You are Mark, and you must be destroyed." He then starts screaming random sounds and noises while beating that rusty broom handle on the ground in front of me. Needless to say, I grabbed my backpack, hopped on my skateboard, and tried to get the hell away from this nut job, but as soon as I started my getaway, he was on my heels chasing me. "Mock" is what I heard him yelling as he charged after me down Broadway. Be gone. I skated my ass off for over 10 blocks before he stopped chasing me, and didn't stop until I made it another 20. I never met that wingnut again, nor do I want to. Ironically, I have been confused for a demon in a separate incident, but that is a story for another time. I was a teenager at the time, about 15 or 16 years old, living in New York City. I grew up in the Bronx, in one of the really bad neighborhoods, but never had a creepy encounter or experience until my mom decided to move into a new apartment that was a couple of train stops away from where I was raised. In high school, I was a very active teenager, involved in a lot of extracurricular activities. On an average day, I would leave school at around 6 or 7 p.m. My commute was about an hour and a half on the bus and train. On this particular day, I left school maybe around 7 p.m. I wore a uniform, so I had on school skirt with a button down and my school sweater in the most humble way possible. I'm going to acknowledge that I am a beautiful woman. I've always been beautiful and took very good care of my parents, even as a little girl and especially as a teenager. I was used to men, sometimes way older than me, catcalling me, and I always simply ignored them or made it clear I didn't want to be bothered. So on this day, I'm walking home from the train station, which is a short, maybe 2-minute walk, when my best friend calls me on my cell phone. While my walk home is short, I pass a bunch of shops which are usually closed by 7 p.m. and my building itself is the only building on a dead-end street. Around this time it starts to get dark, and there's not too many people walking around in this area, so it could get pretty dangerous. However, I've never been worried walking home, and I'm on the phone with my best friend, so I wasn't afraid or anything. Besides, I walk really fast, so as I'm walking, I hear 2 men behind me. I'm not paying attention to their conversation, since I'm having my own and didn't really think much of it. As I'm approaching the dead end, I stopped to grab something for my bag, and I remember hearing the men stop behind me. It was then that it hit me that I was possibly being followed. I took a couple more steps, continuing the conversation on the phone, so I wouldn't be obvious, and then stopped again and noticed they did the same this time. They were closer to me, because I could feel the negative energy on my back. My heart started racing, and I didn't know what to do. My building was on a dead end, and even if I made it to my building in time, I would have had to ring the buzzer and wait for my mom to let me in, and would leave enough room for anything to happen to me. In that time, the men could kidnap me, stab me, or anything. The men continued to follow me. And by this point, they stopped talking. I continued to act as everything was normal with my friend on the phone. By this time, my friend is ready to get off the phone. So she says, "Talk to you later," in which I respond, "Okay, talk to you later." And then I came up with my plan. There's a corner store just before you walked through the dead end. So after my friend hung up the phone, I acted as if I was still talking to her, and said aloud, "Oh, damn, I forgot to get something from the store for my mom. I'm going to pick it up real quickly." The men stopped. I crossed the street to the corner store, and as soon as I got inside, I turned around to see if they had followed me, and there they were standing outside of the store, watching, as if they were waiting for me to come out and follow me home. They had hoodies on, and it was really hard to see their faces. I felt this rush of fear, and it's weird, but I felt as if a guardian angel or something was watching over me and telling me to trust my gut. So I called my mom. I knew she would freak out, but I said, "Mom, I think these two men are following me. I'm in the corner store. The waiting outside. Please come get me. I'm scared." So I waited until my mom showed up with this really big man, who was apparently our neighbor, in a metal baseball bat. When the men saw them go into the store, they scurried away, and will never forget that day. I know that if I allowed myself to be completely distracted by my phone, something have happened to me? I am currently in my 20s, and no walk from home to work or anywhere has ever been the same for me. I am always on alert and aware of my surroundings, especially when on the phone. Ladies, please be careful. Don't let your guards down when on the phone, be aware of your surroundings, and encourage your children to do the same. I don't know what those men intended for me, but for all I know, it was a matter of life or death. This is a story my grandmother would tell me when she was trying to put the fear of God in me when she was about 28 or 30 years old. She went to New York City for a major business meeting. She was supposed to meet someone at another destination, and had the hotel call a taxi. When she went outside to wait, she saw a taxi already outside. She assumed it was hers and helped herself in. She didn't really notice anything special about the taxi. She told the driver the address, and off they went for about 10 minutes. She didn't notice that they were going a weird way. After 15 minutes, she started getting worried and asked the driver where they were going. At this point, they were heading out of New York City, and she realized what kind of situation she was in. She tried talking to the driver, but he never spoke a word to her. She noticed they were getting closer to a skeezy hotel, so she made a decision. She noticed he never locked the doors, probably thinking she wouldn't jump out of a moving car. He didn't know my grandmother was a badass motherfucker who took care of 5 kids on her own and worked full time. She tucked her legs, opened the door, and rolled the fuck out. She ran as fast as she could and hid. She saw him go up and down the road a couple times and eventually leave. When he finally left, she walked down the road to another hotel. She walked in and asked to use their phone, and they actually said no. Then she demanded to use their phone, and the same voice she uses to make sure I know she's serious. Yeah, they let her use the phone. She called whoever she was supposed to meet and told them where she was, and to bring the police. They came. She filed out a report and left. The math is that the police raided the hotel and founded the house, kidnapped women who were forced to prostitute themselves. She told her friend that she wanted to cut the job short and go home. He told her, "You're not the type of woman to let getting kidnapped mess with your life, are you?" So she stayed in the same city she was kidnapped in and finished her work. This story took place in the summer of 2013. My mom and I, being 16 at the time, were on a 6-week road trip across the country. During the 4th week of our trip, we found ourselves in New York. At this point in the trip, we were both exhausted from being on the road for so long and from spending far too much time alone together. We had made it all the way across the country, so we weren't giving up on the adventure. One night, we had tickets to the Yankees game. We went. We enjoyed the game and had a good time. The game was over at around 10 or 10:30 p.m. We were staying in New Jersey, so in order to get back to the hotel, we had to take the subway then walk some distance to Penn Station to take the train back to Jersey. So we leave the stadium and get to the subway station, along with thousands of other baseball fans. Luckily, we were able to find the right subway and the exit we needed to get off at without a hitch. We get off the subway and left the subway station and started our walk to the train station. At this point, it was probably close to 11 p.m. and there weren't many people walking the streets, being from the LA area. I'm not new to the big city, but NYC was a new, foreign, and exciting place to me. I was walking pretty slow, trying to take in all the sights. I was looking around and I realized we were right across the street from the Empire State Building. I was stoked and pointed it out to my mom. She, however, did not share my excitement with a look of sheer terror on her face. She says through gritted teeth, "Walk faster and hurry up." Now, I was completely oblivious as to what was going on, but because of how scared she looked, I hurried up without question. She then leaned into me and said, "A guy behind you is about to grab your bag. If he does, let him have it and run." I was stupidly wearing a Drawstring Angels backpack, which had been a free giveaway at a baseball game. I knew that was a dead giveaway, that I was a tourist, as my mom said, that I quickly glanced behind me. This huge man was only a few feet back from me, and was intently looking me over. He looked about 7 feet tall as I'm 5'8", and he towered over me. I started walking so fast I was almost at a jogging pace. My mom then turned around and looked him square in the eye, and she began walking as fast as me. We were approaching a large intersection, so we started looking around to see if we could yell for help if the guy started to grab me. Much to my relief, there was a cop car parked near the corner. The guy must have seen this too when he turned the other way at the intersection. When we finally got to the train station, my mom told me she had noticed this man and had followed us all the way from the subway station. I got extremely lucky that night with a cop being there, and it served as a good lesson to me. I always pay more attention to my surroundings. Now,